Welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, June the 28th, 2023, and this is the API Server Network Proxy meeting. This meeting is part of many SIGs and it's being hosted by Kubernetes SIGs. So as such, we follow their code of conduct, which basically means please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, raise your hand, although there's only 4 of us right now, so it's probably not a big deal. So with that, we'll get to the agenda. Joseph was just saying it'd be nice to review what we went over last time. So yeah, which of the would you just want to go in order, Joseph?
Sure, and I think I've got a little bit of state on all of these.
All right, cool.
That first ability to control at a finer level, I know Walter and I synced offline about it as well. I think that he and I are both in agreement that it should be moved over to the KK repo as an open issue there for more API machinery folks, because it's a pure API server feature or issue.
Okay, and so wouldn't have an impact on GA requirements one way or the other?
Probably not.
Okay.
We should just keep track, follow it.
I think specifically to your point, David, this is an enhancement to what we already have, and we would like to treat it as an enhancement rather than a requirement.
That sounds reasonable. I agree that I don't see that it would have any impact on the connectivity server itself. This looks like it would be a request having no proxy setting in the configuration.
Yeah.
The second one, the cosmetic pass, that's been merged. So we can move on to the delete stale UDS PR. I was really hoping to kind of finalize our decision on this one, because it's been kind of hanging open unresolved for a little while.
Yeah, to phrase it a little differently, if other people's memories of this differ from mine, but my memory of this was that last time we had this meeting, we agreed that we would leave it open till this meeting, and then if no one had an objection in this meeting, we'd go ahead and merge.
Yeah, I know that Walter and I have stayed on this PR, or I guess there's an issue and a PR, and I'm referring to my PR there, that number. Is that the one?
Do I have the right one open for this 476?
I think that's the PR.
Oh, actually, so this is a PR from Guetli. I'm not sure his name. And then I think I sent a counter proposal PR, actually.
Is that this 498, I guess?
I think so. Yeah, this is the one that this is kind of my counter proposal that I think is strikes the right balance. Did either of the 3 of you have any, like, already reviewed this, or is this kind of fresh to you?
Or would you like background?
Yeah, we can summarize.
I take it this is trying to do the equivalent of what normally happens when something actually running a server fails. Eventually the port gets cleaned up, and when you restart again, the port's just open. And in this case, the file doesn't get cleaned up, and you're hoping that it would, or you would like the default behavior to be, I claim this file.
Right, and so the question is, do we allow you to, do we remain at least like, we're going to be making a non-backward, the PR is about not making it the default behavior different than the old one, which is not backward incompatible. And the question is, how close to backward compatible do we want to be? Do we want to blanket clean up, or do we want to allow for the idea that there may be people relying on the current behavior that we're unaware of, and at least give them a flag so that they can get the old behavior?
I think I would give them a flag. I can understand people being wigged out by the idea of that file wasn't yours for some reason.
And Joseph and I completely agree with you, David. And that's why we have 498.
Yeah, 498 looks pretty reasonable to me. I don't have reservations.
Yeah. And that was basically my ask as well, David. I was just like, look, I can see that the old behaviors probably shouldn't have been the default, but I really want to leave an out in case there's a case we don't understand or know about.
Yeah. I think it's Walter that had a brainstorm that, like, if somebody was operating multiple proxies on the same host, they could possibly want to run things in a more paranoid mode.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it probably wouldn't be safe to clean up the UDS file, and they likely have their own way of doing the cleanup. And I would rather leave the door open in case someone is running in that mode.
Yeah, so would I.
Cool. I'm
Awesome.
not hearing any disagreement.
So I think you are good to go, Joseph. We can unhold it and let that merge.
Great.
I don't know if it'll let me unhold here. I guess it will. All right, cool.
The advantages of being the SIG lead. You have more power now, Mika.
It kind of scares me.
No offense, but good. I'd much rather people be a little concerned about extra power.
Okay, so, and then the last topic, Walter and I are still trying to find a time to connect about getting the recordings uploaded, but I'm back stateside now, so it should be easier to figure something out.
Friday?
Yeah, that works for me.
My weeks are basically 8 or 9 straight hours of meeting Monday through Thursday, and then a few meetings on Fridays. So.
Okay, yeah, just ping me what time is good for you, and I'll be there.
Okay.
Okay, so on to the next topics we have. Did we want to get into the GA requirements draft?
Yes.
I honestly don't have a large change since the last time. I don't think I've changed the, like, bulleted high level swag in a while. And the latest feedback I received was it would be good to massage this KEP into the latest template so that all the new questions around, like, reliability and observability can be more clear. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not sure we should jump into this here. I will say one thing.
I had gone through and, like, looked at the high level list. I didn't have any reservations about it. I didn't know how to do some of the stuff. Like, I don't know how to do the post dial instrumentation and stuff, but I believe that you do. So.
Okay. I will mention one possible topic for either now or next meeting. As I was sort of thinking about, I took a look at the template, and one of the questions is around cross version and test coverage. And I thought that it might lead us to revisit the recent approach we've made to our branching strategy. And actually, branching strategy is a topic I remember Imran, who I see isn't here today, was curious about. So we may want to defer a larger discussion about that until he's back to available. But I think that we may need to revisit that anyway.
So I think that's a good point. Having said that, Joseph, this is recorded. And so even if we don't want to do the full discussion, I think it would be valuable to at least do a brief background for everyone here.
That's a good idea. We have the time today, that unless there's any objections, maybe that would be a good thing to use this time for.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So this is a little bit off the cuff, but from memory, and I've been involved. So as a reminder, my involvement in connectivity proxy is sort of goes back a couple years, but it was after it was largely designed and implemented. And I've been on the GKE team at Google, and basically I worked to integrate it and use it within GKE and to sort of stabilize all the issues that we found, which in the beginning were a little more severe and had to do with reliability, but then sort of the tail end was more just, resource leaks and other not quite as serious and user-facing issues. And things feel pretty stable now. So then part of that recent stabilization push, so I think only like half a year ago or so, is that right, Walter? A small group of contributors, which sadly was all Googlers, so it wasn't done in the open community, held a meeting to sort of hash out how can we move forward with some stabilization bug fixes and get them backported in a way, because at that time, there was only a 0.0.x and a single, I think, the master branch in the repo. And we had historically a chronic problem where contributors would sort of send a PR and update Go mod dependencies in a way that would make, in particular, there's a connectivity dash client sub like Go module that's a subdirectory within this repo. And that is compiled into API server over in KK. In particular, we would sort of frequently run into updates to that Go mod that would then make things harder to backport or even use at all in KK. Walter's got a hand up. I might have made a mistake. What do you want to say?
No, I don't think you made a mistake, but I think you touched kind of lightly on the client, and I think it is kind of key. So I would actually spend a little more time on it. So we have two Go mod files, and we've got one library and a bunch of binaries. The purpose of the library is to be consumed by whoever is using the connectivity, which is almost always going to be the Kube API server. So that Go mod, the Kube API, the library for the Go mod file has to be compatible with the Kubernetes version that it is going to be compiled into. And we want to be careful about ever letting it get ahead of the version of Kubernetes that it's going to be compiled into, because if it is, then Go is going to upgrade the dependent libraries, sort of the diamond problem. And so for things like gRPC, Klog, etc., we need to pay a lot of attention to the versions of the libraries in that specific Go mod file.
Right. And it's one repo that has at least 3 big important moving parts. The connectivity client library that Walter just summarized. Also the connectivity server binary, and then the connectivity agent binary. So ultimately, in a typical cluster, what you see is at least 3 different binaries. Typically, it'll be API server with the version of connectivity client that's compiled into it, and those other 2 binaries all talking to each other. Which actually sort of dovetails with that other topic of version skew testing strategy. I'm not sure how to approach that, actually. So let's see, back to branching strategy. So we had, like a year ago timeframe, we had a single branch and we were tagging releases as 0.0.x, and just keeping that client library's Go mod compatible with as far back as we would ever think that we would need to reasonably backport bug fixes. Around half a year or so ago, we introduced a second branch. So the current branching strategy, we have a documentation of this, but I think the current branching strategy is KK at 1.27 and newer will use the 0.1 tag and mainline branch or master branch, and older KK versions will continue using the 0.0 release tag series, and there's a corresponding branch to that, release dash 0.0. But we may in the future want to have a one-to-one branching strategy with KK. That's also an idea on the table. But but it would seem to have more overhead. There's kind of this tension between being more tightly coupled or more loosely coupled with KK. When I was adding instrumentation, some Prometheus metrics to connectivity client, it was actually very difficult to get those emitted from API server. And if the whole connectivity project were more tightly coupled and like lived in a staging directory, that would have been avoided. But I can see that things are structured to be a little more loosely coupled. So that's also kind of part of this conversation.
I like having a separate project that owns, here is the library you import to speak to me. Here is my agent, and here is my, is it called server, the third component. I like having those as their own project, as opposed to telling somebody like, okay, here's the project, but if you want a client half, it is our client for actually connecting to this and using it is in KK. I can appreciate that it would make the KK aspect easier, but I look at this and say it's a separate library. It's a separate library for speaking to a server. It's not conceptually different than any of the other clients we have.
Yeah, and just to point out a detail here, there's the two modes. There's the gRPC mode, which GKE uses, and then there's HTTP Connect mode. And your point of view is even strongest with HTTP Connect mode. The issues I raised are specific to the gRPC mode.
Yeah.
Like,
the other couple.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, David.
I was gonna say, like, as a for instance, it would be potentially more convenient to have an etcd client baked into Cube. It would always match. We would never conflict on gRPC levels. But it's a separate client for a separate project. It stays separate. We vendor it.
So, couple of points worth talking about why we did point one. Joseph mentioned the Go mod, and the Go mod is certainly part of it. But there were two other triggering events that all happened around the same time. So one is a couple of the Kubernetes security folks had CVEs that they wanted fixed, and they just ran a script that uniformly upgraded our Go mods. That's fine on the agent and server side, but it actually introduced some problems on the client side because it was accidentally upgrading the API server, which is where we learned we needed to be very careful about the Go mod in the client side. So that was one piece with lessons learned. The other piece of this was that even for ourselves, there were, I think it was a channel problem, but we had discovered a problem, a performance problem in the connectivity server, and we wanted to do some, I wouldn't say radical surgery, but at least some significant surgery in the system to make the change. And there was some concern about how stable those changes were, and there was resistance to merging those changes in on something that we kind of considered to be the stable line. And so one of the accommodations we came with was we'll branch. That'll allow us to keep something that works with the Go mods, with the CVE. We can put the CVEs in the new one. With the old 127 and before, where we don't want to accidentally upgrade, we'll do that. But it also allows us to then merge some of the more interesting changes into the new line and get them make sure they're stable before, while leaving a good version of everything that is known to be stable. And so
branching, branching sounds fine. I don't know. I don't have an opinion really on whether we track tightly to Cube or not, but it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, so the interesting problem is we have gone back and forth on exactly what is our criteria for creating a new branch. Like, do we do it with every release? Do we do it every time we have a need to make an upgrade, say for a CVE or some other major change, where that change would be moving libraries ahead of the oldest supported API server?
I would totally defer to the person who does most of the maintenance, and that sounds like Joseph, right?
Well, and another detail I remember is Kubernetes community has a range of minor versions that are officially supported. And cloud providers like GKE typically want to still support technically unsupported older versions. So I know that that was also a problem that was solved with branching. It sort of allowed us to have a branch that still supported backporting to older stability fixes to older KK versions.
I will say there that I think you could also very justly say, look, company X, if you want to be able to do maintenance on a thing, fork it and run your maintenance. And it's not evil fork. It's not fork that is evolving independently. It is, and trying to pitch itself as I'm the source of truth. It is, I have a different maintenance guarantee, and my maintenance guarantee requires me to be able to build my service separately. And that's very common. Red Hat does that to be able to provide CVE fixes for things, for instance. We also have an extended support. So we have a repo where we can do that. And we aren't trying to fork a community, but we are maintaining very old versions of a product. So I'm also okay if you do want to make branches. That's also fine. I like the way Cube has a branch for every release, because I think it does make it easier. Just if there was some reason why you didn't want to, coming back and saying, look, company X, it's a little awkward when it's your company, but this is the cost of doing business. The community cannot maintain this for you.
Yeah, I think the downside to where we've arrived is that contributors are confused which branch they should be interacting with. I think it's a little easy to miss the documentation that we do have on the README file, or it might be the releases file, can't remember. And like cluster operators are not sure which of these minor series tag versions they should be configuring their cluster with, or how dangerous it is to allow a little bit of version skew between their API servers, compiled client library, and the proxy and the server and agent binaries. So I think right now we have those problems.
So, I mean, it would tie us more closely to Kubernetes, but we could go with the client Go strategy of naming our minor version based on the API or the Kate's version that it was designed to go with.
Yeah, I thought of that too. Would you do 0 dot and then like 27 while we're beta, and then maybe graduate to like 1.29 when we're GA?
I mean, it seems bizarre, but yeah, I think that's actually what I would be saying.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds fine to me.
Thought about that. I mean, there's a really nice thing about that proposal, which is it really removes ambiguity.
Yeah. If you think that is reasonable and not too onerous for you, sounds fine.
I think it might be the most reasonable, to be honest, where I'm sitting. Because it's only once every roughly quarter of a little bit of pretty easy maintenance. I'm not sure how other repo maintainers might feel. Like if I'm hit by a bus, whether things might kind of dangle.
They will be able to renegotiate if they have to. So, and anyone who feels strongly, I mean, it's an open source project. If someone feels strongly, they'll be here. So.
Yeah, also, as long as it's in the README, I mean, I would insist on the instructions being there, but I mean, I think we've been heading that direction anyway.
Yeah.
I'd just like to note we have about 1 minute left in our officially scheduled time.
So probably no new agenda, but we seem to have arrived at a little bit of consensus on this, actually.
I agree. One quick topic I'll bring up, not because I want an answer now, but I think it is worth thinking about with the GAing and other things. One issue that and I think it's really more of a performance issue. I don't think it's a correctness issue. But if you look at the usage mechanism has 2 tunnel segments. We think of it as one tunnel, but it's actually 2 tunnel segments. So there is a tunnel segment between the API server and the connectivity server, and then there is another tunnel segment between the connectivity server and the connectivity agent. If you look at the tunnel segment between the connectivity server and the connectivity agent, it is always gRPC, and there is one HTTP connection for every server agent pair, and we multiplex all traffic over that single tunnel segment. I mean, for each of those segments, we just multiplex all the traffic that needs to go over that segment. It gets multiplexed. For the API server to connectivity server segment, we actually set up a separate tunnel segment for every connection. It has to do with the fact that it was originally wrote with HTTP Connect, and the engineer who originally wrote it, who is no longer here, felt it was easiest to just keep that same behavior, whether it was HTTP Connect or gRPC. HTTP Connect does not support multiplexing, so there really wasn't another choice for the HTTP Connect, and it was felt easiest just to maintain that same behavior with gRPC. It's expensive to create a new connection, and at some point, I think we should consider using the same mechanism we use between the agent and the connectivity server to actually be able, specifically for gRPC, to be able to multiplex traffic across that tunnel segment and only actually create one such segment.
If we were to do that, it would require both changes to the connectivity server and to the QAPI server, right? Or to the client library and then vendoring in, correct?
Absolutely, which is one of the reasons I've been waiting for you to be here, David.
So 2 choices. That's actually, I'm surprised you guys have tolerated that so long. I could see accepting that as a GA criteria, where this is such a significant behavioral change and performance fix. We want it to be there when we go to GA so that people have a very clear, I have it or I don't. I'm also willing, if you say, you know what, it's bad, but we tolerated it, this is actually GA, we should just go ahead and say what we have is GA and add an additional feature. I'd be okay with that. If I were in your shoes, I think I'd want that multiplexing before I called it GA, though. Yeah. Why wouldn't it be a GA criteria? Maybe that's a way to look at it differently.
Joseph, would you like me to try and answer David's question?
Well, I was going to chime in with my own just remark. There's a proposal to simplify the connection identifiers scheme, and I think that it might make sense to do that first, and then it would allow us to write that support for multiplexed client usage after. I think it would just it would help us avoid bugs. When I got in there with some recent memory leak fixes, I feel sitting here that those are that there are interrelated issues there. That's all I was going to say. But yeah, what's your answer to his make it a GA requirement question?
I mean, it's a bit of surgery, and that doesn't mean I necessarily have an answer one way or the other. It's one of those, I'd love to do the work, but realistically, I have so many things on my plate that if I tried to do it, it probably wouldn't happen until winter break. I mean, so I guess, and this is a silly maybe a bit of a silly reason to say maybe we shouldn't do it in the GA, but right now I just don't think we have, unless someone knows of a resource to do this work. I don't see this getting fixed in the next 6 months because I don't think there's anyone with availability to get it done in the next 6 months.
Okay, so that would be it's expensive, but it's not as expensive to run this way as it costs to have a person actually fix it. So, okay. I mean, you guys are actually doing it. So if that's where it stands, fine.
I have sort of a counterpoint. Maybe I might disagree. You might, before declaring GA, you might want to prove to yourself that your proxy server implementation can support multiplexing so that it allows in the future the client to take advantage of it, which might involve a backwards incompatible change to the proxy server.
Oh, so that doesn't already exist given the second tunnel that we have? My understanding was that we already had proof of that because the connection between the connectivity server and the connectivity agent already did this.
I mean, we know that multiplexing can work, and I think maybe there's a subtle difference here. The question is, how can we add what would amount to some sort of cache into the API server so that when a new connection is desired, it automatically grabs the connection, if it exists, cached connection, if it already exists, to the connectivity server. And I think that should be doable, but I mean, to Joseph's point, we'd have to actually confirm that. And to be backward compatible, I think one of the interesting things, especially if we've gone GA, is we would probably need to extend the egress configuration resource to have a flag that controlled the behavior so that we could maintain the old behavior and allow someone to go forward with the new behavior if they wanted it. And that, if we decided we wanted to be backward compatible.
I know we're beyond time, but Walter, can I just ask a clarifying question? This whole time, have you been speaking to reusing the gRPC dialed connection or reusing the proxy RPC stream?
The gRPC.
The first. I was thinking that you were talking about the latter. Okay.
Yeah, just the tunnel segment, so that you would still do a handshake, but the handshake code itself we could transmit across an existing gRPC tunnel rather than actually doing a dial to the connectivity server. It would send a request and would reuse the existing gRPC tunnel.
Okay, yeah. So there are actually two performance improvements on the table, to be clear.
Which one were you thinking?
So if a given, let's see, a given proxy RPC, so there's a proxy RPC that connectivity server exposes. And I think that, I think the protocol assumes that it will never receive more than one dial packet, but it could be extended to support multiple dial packets. So over the same proxy RPC stream, bidirectional stream, the client could be multiplexing multiple proxy connections, right?
We may be saying the same thing. I'm not convinced we're not.
Okay, so that's what I thought you were talking about. And then there's
Well, I think
like
the first
shallow.
I think the first thing is you've got to be able to multiplex over the gRPC. Now, to be able to multiplex over the gRPC, I think you have to be able to send multiple dial requests on the same string.
All right, so we are talking about the same thing. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no. But I mean, just at the network level, it would just be, there wouldn't be a new dial request between the server and the connectivity, the API server and the connectivity server, but there would still be would need a new dial request at the protocol level, which means that you do need to be able to support multiple dial requests.
Mhm.
Which we do between the agent and between the connectivity server and the connectivity agent. At that segment, we allow multiple dial requests to go through.
Right. You know, I think that rekeying the identifiers is more work, and this performance optimization is potentially less work. So I think we shouldn't necessarily rule it out as a GA requirement.
I mean, if we can find a resource for it, we just, we've had this on our plate for a year or two and have yet to touch it. I mean, the one thing I will say, kind of to David's earlier point, how much work is it? Or not how much work is it? How much of a performance hit is it? It is going up right now, but the thing is that I mean, a lot of it depends on how you have your API server configured. Only API server initiated traffic to the data plane in the standard configuration goes through this tunnel, which usually means you're talking your webhooks, right? So
Yeah,
other traffic doesn't tend to get hit by this. It's mostly the webhooks, and it depends on how many webhooks you have.
Yeah.
So one of the go ahead, David.
And what they hook, because pods matter more. If it isn't severe enough to encourage you, who are the people mostly running this, that it needs to be fixed, then that's a decent case for we can fix it later, and just figure out how to handle a rollout to ensure that consumers are able to get what they expect and not fail.
It's fair. I mean, I just cards on the table, little too much honesty. Every time we have a webhook problem, and I mean, we all run Kubernetes clusters. We all know we have webhook problems. This is why we have things like the cell effort. Thank you, David. Awesome. But every time there is a webhook issue, at least in our part of the neck of the woods, there are 3 standard culprits that get pulled out, and this is one of them. In the beginning, it was legit. When I say this, I mean the proxy server, not this particular issue within the proxy server. But the proxy server was one of the 3 standard candidates for the problems with webhook, if webhooks were causing issues. It was like this, Gatekeeper, and
I lost Walter's audio. Did anybody else?
The same for me.
So Walter, we can't hear you, and that probably means you can't hear us. Yeah, at least he's on video.
Yeah.
We should dub him, like assign Ben to dub Walter and tell us what he's saying.
We're multi-channel here.
I love it, because what this means is that Google was watching this meeting. It was like, Walter has said too much. We will squash this.
Amazing.
No, we still can't hear you.
I hear you.
So if it's not severe enough to be on the we absolutely have to fix this, I'm fine doing it afterward. Just I would want a very controlled rollout. I would want to roll out very similar to what we would do for a new cube feature, where
I think Walter had said it might deserve its own egress selector configuration, so that could be the rollout switch.
Yeah.
And well, I think I would also want it feature gated. Just that way, similar to other stuff where it's not just you configure it, but you also say, yes, I know this is alpha for people as they roll out. I think that's doable. So, okay, we can leave it off the GA criteria and put it as a post GA recommendation. We've done that in CUP before, where it's a post GA recommendation but doesn't block GA of the enhancement.
And we're well over, so we probably want to stop soon, but a gentle reminder to add, if you joined late, add yourself to the participants list.
Oh, all right, I'll add myself then. I got to go ahead and drop though. I've got another one in 1 minute. Oh, wow. And Walter wants me to leave. Wow, Walter, you've got a heck of a feedback happening on your mic.
Yeah, it's unusable. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.